One of the key things about this agreement is the actual leaving date can be extended, the transition date. So we may leave on the 29th of March to next year, theoretically, but in practice the real leaving can be extended under this transition period. The citizens' rights goes on for 8 years after that. So anyone who has set foot in the UK basically will have the full rights of a British citizen. So that could go on for 150 years. Let me explain. If somebody was born to a EU citizen the day before we leave, that person had full rights for their lifetime. Whatever child they have in their lifetime will have those rights. And the eldest person in the EU died last year, aged 117. So we could see these obligations to EU citizens going on for 150 years. It's all nonsense. Mrs May is now so discredited, the Conservative Party is so discredited that if there was a general election in the near future, the next few months, most likely outcome would be a victory for Jeremy Corbyn, which would also be a disaster. If we'd have had a Prime Minister back in 2016 that really wanted to leave the European Union and was serious about the whole thing, they would not have gone to Brussels and said, please may we negotiate a withdrawal agreement, because they were never going to give you anything worth having, because why would they? You know, they don't want us to leave. Perfectly understandable from their point of view. But the Prime Minister who really wanted to leave would have said, what we're going to do is to repeal the 1972 European Communities Act as a first step, not a last step. So we've now left under our law and our constitution. So we've left, but don't worry, because all EU law has been transposed into acts of parliament or regulations, so they all still apply, so chaos will not ensue. But as from tomorrow, we will start amending and repealing that legislation according to our own priorities and timescales. Number one, you can have continued tariff-free trade, or we can go immediately onto World Trade Organization terms. What would you like? Give them a week to think about it, and then they can decide. Because it's going to be their decision anyway, not ours. Which do they want? We shouldn't give them a penny. We don't owe them any money. In actual fact, we've been the second or third biggest contributor to the budget ever since we've been a member of the European Union. They've had plenty of money off of us. We have invested billions in their, in their buildings and all the things that they've done in Brussels and on the continent. We're not going to get that money back. We should just accept and write that off and say, well, we'll cut our losses and walk away. Britain should do what it did for the previous 400 or 500 years and be an international trading nation. That's what we were good at, and we led the world in that. And we can still do that. You know, our industries and our universities, which develop new technologies, are still in the forefront. And don't forget, we hear all this stuff about the single market. You don't need to be in the single market to trade with Europe or anywhere else. Trade now is predominantly done under World Trade Organization rules. This whole thing about the single market is another false argument. Don't forget, one of the major areas of trade is food and agricultural products. We pay more for our food because of the common agricultural policy, because of the common external tariff, which protects French and continental farmers. If we get out of that, we can achieve cheaper food prices for our own people, which benefits those on the lower end of the economic scale, and we can also help those countries that want to export food in Africa, the Caribbean, places like that, and we can help those developing nations. What she's got now is an absolute disaster. Nobody wants it, the Leavers don't want it, and the Remainers don't want it. So the only course of action open now, which she isn't going to do, somebody else would have to do it, would do what I've said. The only way Britain is ever going to leave the European Union is unilateral, unconditional withdrawal, where we don't ask them how we're going to leave, we tell them how we're going to leave.
The message is like